All right, there we go. All right. Well, hello everyone. Thank you so much. Now, full transparency here. I know I am the only thing sitting between you and lunch right now. So I promise I will try to keep this as brief as possible, but tackling a topic as big as employment, right? There's a lot of moving parts with it. So one thing I will say is if you do have any specific questions about your state, your loved one, or anything of that sort, please feel free to come talk to me. We do still have some availability for the employment consultation sessions. There's a few spots tonight, and then I know we have some spots available tomorrow. So just wanted to make a plug there in case we're not able to cover everything, or if you have a specific question as well. So thank you, Margot and Monica, for talking a little bit about our 3-2-1-GO program. So we're going to work a little backwards, and I'm going to start telling you a little bit about the National Down Syndrome Society. So we were founded in 1979, and our mission is to empower individuals with Down syndrome and their families by driving policy change, providing resources such as 3-2-1-GO, engaging with local communities, and also shifting public perception. So how many of you all saw the Barbie with Down syndrome? There we go. So trying to make that representation, right, of inclusion on all fronts, right? You're going to hear me talk about the workplace, obviously, and we want to make the workplace more inclusive for individuals with Down syndrome and disabilities, right? But NDSS also wants to make the world a more inclusive place for our loved ones, right? And so just to share a little bit more too, I'm going to dive in to some of our kind of core program areas. And so I know this slide has a lot of information on it. But we will send out the slides. So if you do want to come back and revisit any of this, please feel free. You're welcome to take a picture, or we can send you those slides. But NDSS is kind of broken into these kind of three core areas: resources and support, advocacy and policy, and community engagement. We do have a helpline, so if you ever have a question or looking for additional resources, please feel free to give us a call, on our helpline, because we do have a lot of information available. We also do have kind of different, I'm going to call them teams within NDSS. Margot and Monica are obviously on our health and wellness team. I'm on our employment one. We also have an education and a policy team as well. So there's a lot going on here with NDSS, and we have a lot of resources that are all available on our website to download. So we do have a few copies of some of our guides at our table. So if you have not swung by already, come see us. We would love to be able to give you some of those resources. And while I know earlier, Margot mentioned the research study that NDSS did with the 300 participants. One thing that I wanted to share with you as it relates to kind of what we're going to talk about with employment here, it was kind of an interesting piece, and I'll kind of dig into this, but the stat that came out of it, if you will, from our research project, only 1 in 3 respondents indicated that an individual with Down syndrome of working age was employed. So think about that. Let that number sink in for a second. Only 1 in 3. And then of those that were currently employed, nearly half had no structured program or engagement during the day. And so my challenge for you all is, as we're going through today's presentation, of thinking of ways, you heard about quality of life, right? Employment is a piece of that, right? There's meaningful interactions and engagement for mental health, overall well-being. And so as we're going through today's presentation, and I share a few of the different organizations that are out there and resources that are available, be thinking about how you can get your loved one involved and engaged on some of those fronts. So just a little bit, I'm just going to hit on this very quickly. Our employment program kind of is touching on a variety of different topics. These are kind of the 6 kind of key areas: employment policy and advocacy being one. Some states, your state might still have this on the books, but we are trying to advocate to eliminate things like sub-minimum wage and help individuals transition to a competitive integrated workforce setting. So if you're interested in learning a little bit more about that, come see me at the table. But we are doing a lot around that employment policy to, again, create that truly inclusive environment, right? Because if we are not having individuals represented or integrated within that community setting, it makes it just so much more difficult, right, for individuals to find that meaning and find that purpose. And we want to make sure that individuals are included on all fronts. Resource development is another key area. NDSS is in the process of also creating a transition guide. So be on the lookout for that from us here in a little while. As well as some other self-advocate oriented resources. So I know we are working on a volunteer one. So if you're interested in that, one of our self-advocates on staff, and that's something I failed to mention, but NDSS, 25% of our staff are individuals with Down syndrome. Which I think is pretty incredible. And so we have our self-advocates that are also sharing their perspective and their lived experience with others in the community. And so we have a young lady working on some resources there. Entrepreneurship and private sector engagement are a couple other areas. So we do go out and we do talk with employers about fostering that truly inclusive workplace and environment. It is something that some employers, right, they come to us and they say, oh, I want to hire individuals with Down syndrome, and they just don't know where to start. And so that's kind of what we are trying to do, and then connect them with different resources or organizations. Affiliate support, already kind of touched on in our earlier presentation, but we do have a map of all the local Down syndrome affiliates and associations. So if you are not sure where there's one closest to you, please feel free to check out the NDSS website. We do have a whole map for that there. And then highlighting success. I'm going to come back to this one. I'm going to save this one for last, but I will come back to that one here a little bit later in the presentation. So the importance of working, Margot set me up beautifully, so thank you, Margot. The importance of working, right, is such a facet of life, right, of purpose. Think about how long you're in school and then how much of your life you spend working, right? You spend a good chunk of your time working. There's a lot of years in that space, right, where you're trying to find meaning. Many adults with Down syndrome want to truly be independent and be engaged in the community. And these here, I mean, we could list probably, I mean, we could all come up with a list that is much longer than what I have here for different benefits, but it can include things like improved self-esteem, increased social interaction, enhanced life skills, right? Because oftentimes what you're learning in the workplace translates to other facets of your life, right? And different things to that effect. Increased discretionary income, and I'm going to come back to this one too in a second, but who doesn't want to have a little bit of money to buy things that they like, right? We all want to have a little bit of money to be able to do some of those things. And then better physical and mental health are a couple other benefits as well. Let me go over here. So this young lady here, I'm going to talk about the picture first and talk about this young lady and going to that discretionary income. So this is Kelly. And Kelly wants to be, her passion, she loves makeup. She wants to be a makeup artist. I don't know if y'all know, but some of y'all in the audience probably do. Makeup is very, very expensive, right? It's a very expensive hobby. And Kelly was thinking of ways, she said, well, what can I do to have a little bit more discretionary income to be able to buy this, to start building toward my skills and building my passion? And what she ended up doing was actually starting her own dog walking business. And so she had a passion for pets, and she said, that's my pathway. And so that's exactly what Kelly's doing now, is raising that, building that income up to be able to continue to refine her skill. And I met with her on a call, and I mean, her makeup was impeccable. I was like, you need to teach me what's going on here. But there are things that individuals can do, right, where you can tap into passion. You might be able to leverage that. And I'm going to come back to entrepreneurship in just a minute. But throughout today, right, I think the theme is communication. So going to talk a little on the slide now, having a conversation with your teen or adult about their interest, about what they like to do. I know sometimes from parents that I've spoken with, sometimes it can be a little bit intimidating when your loved one says, oh, I want to go down this pathway, right? But there's always ways to try to support those endeavors in different ways or help them build to it, right? I've worked with a number of job seekers, and I have job seekers that are shooting for the stars here in terms of what they want. And it's really just trying to break down that process for them of saying, okay, well, what's step one? If you're trying to do X, what skill do I need to get to that first step? Second step, let's keep moving through that and advancing, right? We don't all just wake up one day and said, okay, I'm going to be an astrophysicist, right? There's a lot of steps that are going to be going into that. Same thing for your loved one. There's going to be different steps there. So ask some of these questions. I know that And you probably have talked a little bit about employment with your loved one, but really try to dig in with them. Where are their skills? Where does that lie? You can also talk, if you're not talking with your schools and things like that as well, definitely rope them in on that conversation. They should be a part of that. They're also observing your loved one's skills within different settings there. And one thing I can definitely say is get them involved in other activities as well. I mean, it's a great, not only great resume builder, it's going to build that network. And as many of you know from probably personal experience, right? How many people found a job through networking or someone that they know? By show of hands. Okay, that's a lot of hands that went up, right? I know y'all in the front might not be able to see the back, but there was a lot of hands that went up. It's the same thing for your loved one. So I think that oftentimes we think that there's going to be such a drastic difference. A lot of what you all are doing in your everyday life to advance your own careers can also be applied to helping your loved one. So not to make things sound overly simplified, but there's a lot there that you all can consider kind of building off of. Preparing for employment. So I'm going to move through this pretty quickly because Kelly and Margot and Monica have also set up a lot of this already. But just to kind of roll through and talk a little bit about IDEA. So I know some of this is going to be pretty United States centric. So I apologize for the international folks in the room. But IDEA stands for Individuals with Disabilities Employment Education Act. And it is the law that ensures students with disabilities have access to free and appropriate public education. The two indicators that are actually related to transition are going to be indicator 13 and 14. Indicator 13 is specifically focusing on transition services and helping your loved one as they're kind of approaching that post-school life and things that they can do. 14 is going to be on post-school outcomes. So schools do genuinely care about this. And oftentimes I know you all have been in IEP meetings and you sometimes have to truly advocate, but they do want that. And in case you're not aware, and this does vary, I want to say this does vary by state. Oftentimes you must have a transition plan in place by age 16. Some states are earlier, Virginia is as young as 14, but really trying to take the steps there to go ahead and start that conversation. And it can include things. Oftentimes, I know that there's a heavy emphasis on the IEP and transition around academic outcomes, but employment can be included in that. Independent living, social skills. There's all these other facets, right, of life that are going to help them as they're entering the workforce and transitioning out of school, right? That can definitely set them up for success. And I'm going to talk about a couple transition programs here in just a second that might be hopefully of interest to you all if you've not heard of a few of them. But really, who can be on your team? I know sometimes people say, well, who needs to be in that room when I'm having these conversations around transition? Obviously you, ideally your loved one, right, is going to be present in those meetings and hopefully leading them if they're able to, or at least being present and an active participant within those meetings can be so important, right, to have their voice be heard. As you can probably imagine, self-advocacy is such an important facet of employment as well. And being able to ask those questions and really say, this is what I need to excel or succeed. Special education and general education teachers, and then the local education agency representative. This can, sometimes the power of this is often a city or state representative that is going to sign off on this because this is a legally binding document, if you will. Sometimes they do delegate, I'm going to say the ability or the power to sign off on this to state administrators, so just be mindful of that as well. But one thing that I will say is your Department of Voc Rehab. So every state has access to Department of Voc Rehab, sometimes dubbed or named different things in different states. It might be aging and rehabilitation services. It can be named a couple of different things, but every state has one. And your Department of Voc Rehab agency can also be present in that, especially if they have employment-related goals and outcomes that they're looking to move toward. All right, so this link here at the bottom will be available to you all as well. This is actually coming out of Colorado. And these examples here, these are just a few ideas of what these employment kind of related transition goals can look like. And sometimes that might be going to school, to going to a community college to get a certificate or get a degree in something that is going to help them, right, advance their employment outcomes. It might be that they're going to transition to work at a local hospital or different jobs or things to that effect as well. And so these are just a few examples. You don't have to write these goals exactly in this way, but just trying to give you a variety of things as you are working with your loved one to think through on what that could look like for them as they are maybe on their pathway. And I encourage you, if I know some of you all have adults that are obviously out of transition, out of school, still have this conversation with them on their employment goals. Sit down and write these out. Again, if they are interested in working part-time and doing X, Y, and Z, write that out with them and hold them accountable for it. I think that sometimes just putting something in writing can just be such a powerful component of really making that a reality, right? Once you see it on paper, that can really make it real. Now, a couple of these transition programs, by show of hands, has any of your loved ones ever participated in Project Search? Okay, I see one hand. So a couple, okay. I see a couple of hands going up here. So Project Search does have programs internationally as well. I know they just opened up one in Italy. And so there are a few. I think they also have a pretty big presence in the UK. But Project Search is a transition program. Oftentimes it is going to be for those 18 to 22-year-olds. Some of the programs do work with students that are older, but generally it is going to be that 18 to 22. They are a fantastic program. What they do, just to give you kind of I'm going to give you a personal example from a job seeker I had worked with. At Inova Hospital in Alexandria, Virginia, they have a Project Search program, and they help their students. They essentially are working at the hospital and rotating out through different internships, if you will, throughout the hospital. So they're getting exposure, right, to that kind of career, I'm going to call it career counseling, if you will, and that job kind of sampling, if you will, of being able to see what is it that I like, what is it that I don't like. So a young man that I had worked with, he went through and actually was in the office at first, and he went to medical supplies, he went to back of the house, he went to food services. He went through all of these, and ultimately he found out that he was like, his goal, he wanted to be a chef. He wanted to cook. That's what he loved doing. And so that's what he ended up doing after we had gotten him a job at, he ended up actually working at a Starbucks for a while. And then he was like, okay, I've worked at Starbucks long enough now I'm going to go on. And he ended up actually applying to a job by himself, got a job at the Pentagon working on one of the food services places there. So Project Search does a really fantastic job of setting your loved ones up for success. So I cannot sing their praises enough. You are maybe considering programs for your loved one. Definitely talk to your schools about that, because oftentimes they are working kind of in tandem with a lot of school districts. Project Life is, I'm going to call it a Project Search prerequisite. So sometimes Project Search might not necessarily be the fit for your loved one because they might not, for example, we talked about the physical demands, right, of working. If you're standing and your loved one just doesn't have the stamina yet to be able to stand for 4 hours at the hospital or move these carts or different things like that, Project Life might be a really good program. They also do more than just employment related things. They also do focus on like community engagement and the independent living skills. Like they do a lot more than just employment. They do have 36 locations. I don't think that they have any Canada. I know they have a couple locations in Canada. So they are always expanding those. So as I'm sharing these programs with you, if you all come back next year, I'm hoping that then they will have more numbers. They're constantly growing. But if there's not a Project Life program in your area, you might be the person to bring in there. So that's a fantastic program too. And then the last one that I just want to bring up is Bridges. So this is a program that was founded through the Marriott Foundation. And we've actually had a gentleman that works very closely with the National Down Syndrome Society named David Egan. David Egan actually went through the Bridges program. So he worked out with Booz Allen Hamilton over in Tysons, Virginia, and he ended up doing an internship there. Ended up after 2 years completing the internship, got hired on as a staff member, has been there for 25 years. And also I'm going to do a shameless plug for David. David is also an author and has a really fantastic book. So if you've not checked out David's book, definitely check it out. It is called More Alike Than Different: My Life with Down Syndrome. So if you've not checked out David's book, really fantastic. But he really attributes, and he's wrote numerous articles about this, he attributes Bridges to really setting him up for career success. So they are really a fantastic program. They do have only a few smaller locations, so they might not have one necessarily close to you. But hopefully if you are in one of these areas, definitely take advantage of them. Their programs are free. So I always like to make a note there of that. Excuse me. Sorry, doing all the talking today. So there are other services though that after you have finished kind of transition. So once you're out of school, there are also still adult employment related programming as well. But before I touch on that, I do want to say when you are still in transition though, if your student is working and your loved one is working with the Department of Voc Rehab, they do have services called PRE-ETS, and that stands for Pre-Employment Transition Services. Ask your school about this. Your loved one, as they're going through school and finishing up, this should be something that is on your school's radar. They should be also working in tandem with some of this. And oftentimes those PRE-ETS classes or programming can start as young as 14. So definitely, if you have not talked with your schools about this, try to talk with them, talk with VR about what PRE-ETS can look like for your loved one. And services on the PRE-ETS side can be job exploration, work-based learning are a couple things that they're counseling on post-secondary options, and then also work readiness training and self-advocacy are some of the areas that PRE-ETS programming can kind of touch on. So I know Kelly kind of already alluded to a lot of these. Even if you don't have a Down Syndrome Association in your area, or the programs that I shared with you are not in your area, hopefully there will be some others. The ARC has a huge presence and especially across the US, Easter Seals and Best Buddies. Best Buddies does have a jobs program. People might not realize that. They're thinking of Best Buddies in high school where it is more friendship based and things like that, but they actually do have a jobs program. So definitely reach out to any of these organizations. Now, I will say this with the caveat, kind of like with the next bullet point on VR services, everything does look different, right? Not every ARC has an employment program. Not every Easter Seals has something employment related. So, but try to reach out and see what they have available, because they might also be a really great resource to point you in a couple of different directions there. And entrepreneurship. So I spend all day talking about this one and all the fantastic people on the front of this guide. We do have some copies of this guide here to be able to pass out. So if you do want a copy, please swing on by. The guide really is introducing the concept of entrepreneurship and just saying, is this a fit for you? You don't have to do traditional employment and or entrepreneurship. It can be an and. So you can be an entrepreneur and work a typical traditional job, right? So that's just something to keep in mind. So if your loved one is looking at things and traditional employment might not be the route that they want to go, but they have a passion. I know I spoke with a lady earlier, her daughter has a passion for art. We have a number of artists and entrepreneurs with Down syndrome that are out in the community selling and engaging with their art. There are two really, really fantastic programs that focus on entrepreneurship. Celebrate EDU and Synergies Works. Has anyone, by show of hands, I'm curious, has anyone ever heard of those before? Or is that new? Yeah, okay, I love new stuff. So both of these have really fantastic programming. They have online courses that are going to walk your loved one through how to write a business plan. Where do I start? What do I want to sell? So both of these programs have that. They kind of have a network as well of helping out. And I want to say both of them now are offering kind of seed funding to kind of help kickstart a small business. So definitely check those out. They're really fantastic programs, and I'm happy to talk a little bit more about those if you are at all interested. So Kelly, I think, did a fantastic job. So I'm going to roll through this relatively quickly. But as you're thinking about employment, these are definitely the areas you're going to want to touch on, right? Obviously, work can impact benefits, right? If you're not aware of where things kind of land. And I'm going to go ahead and say, full disclosure, I am not going to be the SSA expert for you. So I would definitely, as Kelly had suggested earlier on, reach out to Social Security Administration if you do have specific questions. And I'm going to share another resource in a minute. But our NDSS Financial Wellness Guide does kind of provide a baseline on all of these things. And we also do have that top right picture there, those ABLE, we do have some of those ABLE frequently asked questions handouts. So at our table. So if there's anything you want to know a little bit more about ABLE, feel free to come grab one of those and also check out our financial wellness guide. So Kelly kind of had already mentioned this, so I'm not going to spend a ton of time. I know there's a lot of words on this page. This is pulled from our financial wellness guide, but there are considerations as you are thinking about working and maintaining benefits. And this is a conversation that I will be very candid that this is going to be a very personalized decision. I've worked with individuals, especially if your loved one is even thinking traditional employment or entrepreneurship. I have entrepreneurs that they say, I don't want to worry about benefits. And they go and they are making enough through their own business. So that's a conversation that you will have to kind of weigh, if that makes sense, on do you need the SSI? Is that a benefit that you are wanting to maintain, or are there other options? So that is a very personal decision. So I'm not going to say one way or the other, but that is something for you all as you all are thinking and having those conversations with your loved one to kind of assess. One thing that I will say related to this, obviously Kelly was talking about different resources. Every state has a work incentives planning and assistance program, and people might not realize this, but they can actually provide free consultation on how work will impact your benefits. And so definitely reach out to them if you are looking for more information on that. I know I'm throwing a lot of information, a lot of links, a lot of organizations at you. But this is going to be something to definitely check out. And I can always, again, share these links with you all as well. ABLE, not going to spend a ton of time talking about ABLE. I know Kelly did a fantastic job there. I was hoping to set Kelly up and then she'd tell you more, but she's already kind of touched on this. But ABLE accounts are a really great way to continue saving for your child or your adult without jeopardizing those benefits. So definitely something to keep in mind. And the contribution limit, as Kelly mentioned, is $17,000 this year. They sometimes do up that. I know in the past it was only $15,000, but it's generally is going to go up. So 2024 might look a little different, but just keep that in mind as well. Special Needs Trust, again, I'm just going to echo what Kelly said on this. The Special Needs Alliance is a really, really fantastic resource if you are looking for this. Ideally, right, this trust should be drawn up by somebody who is qualified. Kelly kind of talked about that earlier. So I'm not going to spend a ton of time on that, but if you are looking for that, definitely check out the Special Needs Alliance to find someone near you that can assist you with that if you are looking to go the route of working with the trust. Home and community-based services. So these are often tied to Medicaid waivers programs. So not going to spend a ton of time on that. There's a lot of different programs out there, but your loved one, these can range, right? The intent behind these waiver programs and services is to keep your loved one in the community, keep them at home. And so these are different things that can be applied to help your loved one with that. There's a lot of different programs. I would probably recommend sending you to that link to find the ones that are most appropriate for you. Transportation is another area, and I know that this can be a tricky thing, but some states, and some of you all are probably aware of this already, but depending on where you are, there are different paratransit services that can offer and help your loved one get to and from places. That can be work, that can be different appointments. So definitely look at some of those. I know, for example, in DC, we have a service called Metro Access, and Metro Access will come and pick up and drive you to where you need to be. So take a look at those different options, but public transportation and teaching your loved one how to go through that, because obviously getting to and from work and other things like that, where they might not, if you do have public transit options. I know I'm from a rural area in North Carolina, and these are not options for us out my way. But if you are in an area that does have that, there are some organizations that also do travel training. So if that's something that your loved one needs, definitely reach out to that as well, because there's some really fantastic pieces on that front too. And then last but not least on this is natural supports. So I know each of you are already going to be a natural support for your loved one. This also applies to looking at natural supports in the workplace. Who is going to be able to help your loved one succeed, right? And not only within the workplace, but outside of work, within the community. Margot mentioned earlier that that unfortunately those circles, right, got a little smaller, right? And friends were kind of pushed out of that. But we want to make sure that those circles stay large, right? That there are these systems of support and these natural supports in place to help your loved one with whatever task that it is that they're working on, be it that it's employment, education, whatever that might look like for them. Trying to identify those. In NDSS, we are working on some sibling resources that are going to be kind of tying and talking about natural supports a bit more broadly. All right, I know I'm rolling through a lot. Just a few more slides on this, and then I will take any questions if anybody has any. So these, I always just like to put this up here because these are, so if you're pulling up the Department of Labor's website, these are the top 21st century workforce skills. I know sometimes a lot of different programs out there might not be teaching some of these. And some of these are a bit more challenging, right? Teamwork, they are going to what Margot and Monica was talking about that social skills development, right? Collaboration, teamwork. And oftentimes a lot of that is through exposure, that community integration, being involved, just getting out there, even if it's volunteering, even if your loved one does not want to go the route of working full-time, just being involved in the community are building those skills as well. So making sure that, again, and these are going to be some of the areas there. And I'm going to talk about a resource here that can be really, it's a really fantastic resource. So VCU actually has a work transition readiness, or work readiness transition toolkit that is absolutely fantastic. They have a lot of really great at-home activities to check out. So if you have not ever come across this one, definitely check that out. And there's ways, right? Some of the low-hanging fruit, and I always like to think about it like this. Home is the first workplace, right? That's where you're learning those skills. That's where you're learning different things. I mean, if you are thinking about how you can get your loved one more involved, start asking them to take on some tasks, giving them some of that responsibilities, maybe doing it with them, not for them, right? Trying to give them some of that autonomy and also being able to give them feedback. That's a big thing. And feedback is hard for all of us, right? I mean, it can be challenging, but being able to give them that positive reinforcement or saying, well, this is how we can kind of do this differently or improve, because that's how it's going to be in the workplace, right? And anywhere you go, looking at different things that they might be doing and saying, well, I need it actually done this way. Being open and receptive to feedback is something that I think everyone can obviously work on, but it's definitely something that you all can do at home, right? And within that setting. But the work readiness toolkit does have some really great activities about how to increase work ethic or build work ethic, stamina, skills, kind of the whole array of things. So definitely check out the resource. It is really fantastic. And then some of the easiest options here, and I know every single, I of course don't have my phone on me to hold it up here, but each of us, right, more than likely probably has a smartphone. Your loved one probably has some sort of either device or smartphone that they're utilizing. There is a lot of really fantastic technology on there that is free, that you don't even need to buy. You don't have to go out and buy these specialty, programs. You can if you want, of course. But there are a lot of really fantastic apps on there that can help out with different things related to executive functioning, following tasks, going through a routine and kind of building those skill sets up. So happy to talk more on that as well. And I'm not going to get in the weeds on this, but there is a lot out there that can go ahead and start setting your loved one up for success in the workplace. So, and it can be even like recording videos, right? If your loved one, if they are making their bed for the first time, we have a guide actually for our geared toward employers that is doing precisely that. It is modeling, like Margot and Monica mentioned earlier, it is modeling those activities and then giving your loved one the space to be able to do it and watching them succeed, right? So even recording videos, I used to do that with some of the job seekers I worked with on different tasks, saying, okay, this is how you go about using this copier, or this is how you go about taking X, Y, and Z to wherever. So use the technology that you have at hand, because that's going to make it easier, right? I know sometimes, and start incorporating it into your daily task, right? I know oftentimes what I was seeing with some of the families I worked with is that all of a sudden they would graduate, they hadn't used any technology, and they said, my loved one needs some sort of support in the workplace. I can't be there, right? Most employers aren't going to let you hang out with them. And so having that readily available and having them familiar with how to use it can be so advantageous. So just some low-hanging fruit there. I know that sounds like something pretty simple, but just wanted to mention that. So last but not least, if your loved one has had employment success, community success, whatever that might look like, we do want to hear from you. We do love to share out these stories like I shared out Kelly's earlier. We do love to be able to showcase the diverse talents of the community and really just getting out there. So there is a link on our website to be able to kind of submit and share that story. And I hope that each of you will consider doing that, because there's so much talent within this community that we really just want to showcase to employers, right? To showcase to other families really what is possible. And I promise I know I'm at time here. So the last thing I will mention very quickly is our adult summit. So if you are in the Cincinnati, Ohio area or can make it there by November 9th through 11th, we are going to be hosting it. It is obviously all things adult, everything from employment to education, health and wellness, law, self-advocacy. We do have a self-advocate specific track as well. So it's a really fantastic, really going to be a really fantastic event. I know we even have some exhibitors. I'm going to do a plug for some of my entrepreneurs. We will have a kind of an exhibit hall and space of some of the self-advocate owned businesses that are part of our guide, and some others as well. And so really do hope that you all can join us for that, because that will be a great event. And then this is just a list of all those resources I ran through. Again, all hyperlinks. So if you do want them, please feel free to come ask, and we can definitely get you these slides. But I will go ahead and stop there and see if anybody has any quick questions. I'll probably only be able to take a couple because I
don't know that we're going to have
okay.
Unfortunately, the rent